We are just a day away from Harry and Meghan's tour of Colombia. It was announced in late August that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex accepted an invitation from the Vice President of Colombia and the Minister of Equality and Equity to tour the country. This will be Harry and Meghan's second tour of the year, having completed a very successful tour of Nigeria in May. Apparently, alleged efforts by King Charles to stop countries from inviting the Sussexes were unsuccessful. According to reports, their tour will include stops in Bogotá, Cartagena, and Cali, where they will meet local community leaders. Their visit will focus on issues such as cyberbullying, online exploitation, and mental health, in line with the work of their Archwell Foundation. Colombian veterans also participate in Prince Harry's Invictus Games, so there is a possibility that the Invictus Games might be incorporated as well. As with everything Harry and Meghan do, this announcement was met with tantrums from the usual suspects. According to the Daily Beast, a friend of King Charles said this upcoming tour shows the Sussexes' utter contempt for the king, because apparently it isn't being done according to the very long-established way of doing things. Royal tours are usually the result of an invitation by a country to members of the British royal family. For example, the Prince and Princess of Wales were technically invited by the government of Jamaica for their cringy Caribbean tour. As previously stated, Harry and Meghan were invited by the Vice President of Colombia, Francia Marquez. How is that any different than the very long-established way of doing things? This friend of King Charles also goes on to say that royal tours, quote, have always been about diplomacy, building bridges, and reinforcing friendships on behalf of Britain. No. Royal tours have traditionally been about colonial nostalgia and promoting the British monarchy abroad. They are traditionally self-serving attempts by the monarchy to stay relevant abroad. That's why the countries visited are usually former colonies that are now part of the mostly pointless Commonwealth. There is an argument to be made, however, that royal tours bring publicity to the country visited. The fact that Harry and Meghan don't do things traditionally is probably one of the reasons their tour of Nigeria was far more successful than the Prince and Princess of Wales's recent tour of the Caribbean, which was criticized as disastrous and tone-deaf. More on that later. The tantrums over this tour get even stupider. A friend of Prince William's was quoted saying that Colombia has been destroyed by narco-terrorists servicing wealthy drug users in the West, and Harry should stand up and apologize for his own participation in that disgusting trade. What a ridiculous reach. Esteemed viewers might remember that Harry admitted doing blow as a posh youth back in the day in his memoir Spare. He was not, however, a member of the cartel or a drug mule. Meanwhile, the royal family receives millions to visit baby banks and food pantries for 45 minutes at a time. If this source is really a friend of William's, then they have probably snorted coke at some point themselves, because coke was the drug of choice for posh British youths in the early 2000s. The British media have been tantruming since the tour was announced, calling the Duke and Duchess of Sussex hypocrites for going to Colombia, a country some consider to be dangerous, while refusing to travel to the UK over security concerns. Prince Harry has been locked in an ongoing legal battle to secure more adequate security for himself and his family when he visits the UK. In a recent interview, Harry elaborated on his concerns for his family's safety and the reason why he won't bring his family back to the UK.
It's still dangerous, and all it takes is one lone actor, one person who reads this stuff to act on what they have read, and whether it's a knife or acid, whatever it is, and these are things that are a genuine concern for me. It's one of the reasons why I won't bring my wife back to this country.
This is the same ignorant argument Harry and Meghan's detractors made about their trip to Nigeria. Harry and Meghan are happy to travel to countries in which their safety and the safety of their children are guaranteed. High-level government security was provided for them during their trip to Nigeria, and reports have confirmed that Harry and Meghan will have a huge security team with them in Colombia. The constant hate thrown at them by the British media and the unhinged nature of the hate directed towards them on social media makes the UK unsafe for the Sussexes. Listen to what the former head of royal security had to say about security threats towards Harry and Meghan.
In charge of royal protection, how would you characterize the threats that Meghan and Harry receive?
Well, disgusting and very real. I've talked publicly for many years about the threat of extreme right-wing terrorism in this country.
The irony is that while Harry and Meghan's detractors are calling them hypocrites for avoiding the UK, several countries have issued travel advisories over the recent right-wing race riots that have resulted in violent attacks on people of color in several cities across the country. One of the interesting things to come out of Harry and Meghan's tour of Nigeria was that Nigerians and citizens of the Commonwealth got to see just how prejudiced the British media is. Despite all their talk about the importance of the Commonwealth, much of the press coverage of Harry and Meghan's Nigerian tour had colonial undertones and was condescending at best.
Official duties. On Tuesday, Christopher Wilson, a journalist, and the British royal family, in a now deleted tweet, compared Prince Harry and Meghan to the Duke of Windsor, Edward, who abdicated his throne in 1937 to marry an American divorcee, Wallis, and also compared Nigeria to Nazi Germany. Well, his tweet reads, "Desperate to show his wife they were still royal in the eyes of the world, the Duke of Windsor took Wallis on a tour of Germany in 1937. They were greeted ecstatically. Nigeria's human rights records is not far short of Nazi Germany's." I mean, you know that Nigerians have come for Christopher. I mean, there are a lot of untruths in his...
It seems Colombians have already taken notice of the disparaging light their country is being cast in by the British media. The president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, responded to an article about the British press calling Colombia one of the most dangerous places in the world, tweeting dangerous countries are those that emit CO2. Non-dangerous countries are those that absorb CO2. Perhaps the funniest take came from longtime Harry and Meghan hater and senile bigot Angela Levin, who called Colombia one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and said that Harry and Meghan were only going to Colombia because they wanted to stay in a 4-figure sum bedroom. Colombia isn't even in the top 20 most dangerous countries in the world. Clearly, Angela missed the many reports detailing the purpose of Harry and Meghan's trip. Like most of Harry and Meghan's detractors, she seems to have forgotten that Harry and Meghan are not the first members of the British royal family to visit Colombia. King Charles and Queen Camilla visited Colombia back in 2014. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, visited Colombia in 2023. Princess Anne visited Colombia in 1973 and again in 1997. Were they political pawns as well? So why are these people so upset about Harry and Meghan going to Colombia? Some might recall that when Harry and Meghan stepped down as senior members of the royal family, a big deal was made about the fact that they had been denied the half-in, half-out option. In other words, they still wanted to work on behalf of the monarchy, while having the option to pursue opportunities that would allow them to be financially independent of taxpayer money and the royal family. They were denied, which meant no more doing so-called royal things like going on tour. Yet 4 years later, they are going on their second tour of the year, proving that no one has control over them. Second, Harry and Meghan are really good at touring. Like, really, really good. They were good at touring before they stepped down as senior members of the royal family, and they have proven with their trip to Nigeria that they are still really good at touring even without the backing of the royal family. Wherever they go, they are well received, they don't adhere to arbitrary royal protocols, and their casualness makes the other royals look like cold fish. Finally, the royals are struggling to do royal tours in this day and age when people are far less willing to sweep the legacy of colonialism under the rug. William and Kate's 2022 tour of the Caribbean is widely considered to be a PR disaster. The tour was plagued with protest, tone-deaf optics, and cringy colonial nostalgia. William and Kate were even fired by the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, who declared Jamaica's intention to ditch the monarchy and become an independent republic. It was so bad that Prince William issued a statement acknowledging the need to learn from the disastrous tour. The royals can no longer escape the elephant in the room, the legacy of colonialism. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan continue to show that tours can be done in this day and age successfully. Just look at the difference in headlines about the Sussex's tour versus the Wales's tour. As a woman of color, Meghan can go on tour and acknowledge the elephant in the room and connect with people living in the Commonwealth in a way that other royals can't. For example, during Harry and Meghan's 2019 trip to South Africa, Meghan said during a speech, "I am visiting Africa as a woman of color and as your sister." Her Nigerian heritage was a central theme of her and Prince Harry's recent trip to Nigeria, during which she was honored as a princess by 4 Nigerian kings. Harry and Meghan have already announced their plans to visit an anti-colonialism slave town during their trip to Colombia. Unlike the other royals, they aren't afraid to address the legacy of colonialism. Many people of color living in the Commonwealth see the Duchess of Sussex as black royalty, And they see William and Kate as representatives of an archaic institution with an oppressive legacy, and royalists know that. That's why they're mad.